So, welcome to part 3 of my talk, that is interlink between cancer and carcinogens. First, I will talk about ionization radiation. Ionization radiation is identified as X-rays, which forms electrically charged particles or ions. X-rays and gamma rays are especially used for medical imaging. More or less, all of us must have exposed with X-rays once in lifetime. Computed tomography is a radiological method that generates a three-dimensional image for the diagnosis of various diseases. It has been described in several studies that diagnostic X-ray level leads to cause mutation, and up to 10% of this invasive cancer, uh, you know, uh, up to what? Yeah, we can say up to 10% of this invasive cancer incidence. Okay, in this respect, what we call the increased level of screening in a radiation exposure is known of the risk of cancer incidence. Okay, so if you talk about biological impact, that can change according to the dose equivalent of the radiation. Okay, and exposure to very high level of radiation, such as being close to an atomic blast, can cause acute health effects such as skin burns and acute radiation syndrome. It can also result in long-term health effects such as cancer and cardiovascular disease. Exposure to low level of radiation encountered in the environment does not cause immediate health effect, but is a minor contributor to our overall cancer risk. Okay, next, very common is cigarette. Okay, so exposure to various heavy metals depending on exposed dose, genetics, people's immune resistance, and overall health status, age, the level of nutrition has been associated with the risk of different cancers, including breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, and gallbladder cancer, and other cancers. When metal gets into the body through air, food, water, or what we call the dermal exposure, they exert their enzymatic and genotoxic effect on different organs. Some heavy metals such as arsenic, cadmium, chromium, nickel, zinc, are known as developing cancers region. Okay, they bind to vital cellular components such as what we call the structural proteins, enzymes, and nucleic acids. Okay, so chemicals in cigarette smoke cause DNA damage and have been increasing the risk of various cancers, particularly and primarily what we call lung cancer. It is known that nearly 9 out of 10 lung cancers are caused by cigarette smoking. But it doesn't mean that, you know, all the lung cancer is because of smoking only. Okay, so cigarette cause about 1.5 million deaths from lung cancer per year, and it is estimated that a number will rise to nearly 2 millions by 2030s. Okay, next comes ultraviolet radiations. Ultraviolet radiations from sun lamps or tanning beds causes premature aging of the skin, and what we call the DNA damage that can lead to melanoma and other forms of the skin cancer. Okay, the incidence of skin cancer is rapidly increasing. There are also different types of UV rays based on how what we call how much energy they have. Higher energy UV rays are a form of ionizing radiation. This means they have enough energy to remove an electron from an atom or molecules, or in a way what you say, ionize. Okay, so ionizing radiation can damage the DNA or genes in cells, which in turn may lead to cancer. But even the higher energy UV rays do not have enough energy to penetrate deeply into the body. So their main effect is on the skin. Okay. Now, we all nowadays talk about free radicals. Okay. So free radicals and ROS, reactive oxygen substance, are have been associated with the increased risk of cancer. Particularly, free radicals cause cancer and atherosclerosis disease. Okay, and the free radicals led to cancer initiation and promotion by chromosomal defects and oncogene activation. On the other hand, ROS, such as what we call superoxide ions, hydrogen peroxide, hydroxyl radicals, and nitric oxide and their biological metabolites also play an important role in carcinogenesis. So ROS induce DNA damage, including double strand break, base modification, and DNA protein cross links. Okay, so it means all these factors are contributing for this deadly disease. Okay, now little bit about what we call, I have already discussed few things, but little bit more about the air pollution. The emission from the motor vehicle or industrial processes, or what we call the power generation, thermal power plants or other energy generating power plants, the household combustion of the solid fuels and other sources pollute the ambient air across, have the global effect in the world. The specific chemicals in the air pollution are known to be carcinogenic to the humans. So if I remember exactly, in 1971, the US Clean Air Act was established, and ozone, particulate matters, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and lead were defined as air pollutants. These air pollutants cause to acute illness such as vomiting, chronic diseases such as cancer, as well as immunogenic, what you call immunologic, neurologic, reproductive, developmental, and respiratory diseases. So, exposure of these chemicals increases the risk of pleural and peritoneal tumor and lung cancer incidence via DNA methylation, DNA polymorphism, DNA mutation, MI dysregulation. Okay, so these are, I just wanted to convey you a little bit of biological mechanism, how they cause these pollutions and other environmental factors or radiation, how they impact biological phenomena and how they cause cancer. Now, I have discussed about, you all know the use of pesticide. You know, this pesticide can act as a carcinogenic chemicals or tumor promoters that triggers or cause cancer by disrupting hormonal levels. They also do DNA damage, also impact on tissue inflammations and switching the gene on and off. If you have basic background of biology, you must understand what I mean by gene on and off. At least if till 12th, you must have the biology. If someone is not from biological background, you cannot understand lack gene operon or gene operon, lack gene or tryptophan operon. How, what do you mean by gene on and off? Okay, so now you can see here a table on your screen left side. On the several herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides that are linked with cancer. Studies on studies of the people with high exposure to the pesticides, such as farmers, pesticide applicators, crop duster pilots, and manufacturers, shows high rate of blood and lymphatic system cancers. Okay, or what we call cancers on lips, stomach, lungs, brain, and prostate, as well as melanoma and other skin cancer. Okay, you can see now in this graph where you can see the trend of pesticides uses in 5 Indian states, including Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, and Haryana over the year. So imagine how much pesticides we are using, and but obvious we have already discussed the impact of this indiscriminate use of these pesticides. We are only focusing on cancer, but if I'll talk about the indiscriminate use of pesticide, that itself need a complete lecture. Okay, we all, most of us are most already aware about it. Now, still asbestos are used in, you know, the rural areas. So asbestos exposure is the cause of mesothelioma. The asbestos fibers cause inflammation and scarring to mesothelial cells, okay, and DNA when they stuck in the lining of the lungs or abdominal cavity. These mesothelioma tumors develop as a result of the inflammation. Okay, so typically decades after the initial asbestos exposure, this malignant mesothelioma develops when inhaled asbestos fibers cause irreversible inflammation. Okay, it's not always. So when it is irreversible inflammation, there will be a scarring, there will be cell damage, and ultimately it will form tumor, and later it will convert into the what we call the mesothelioma, or what we call the malignant mesothelioma. Okay. Now, other causes I have mentioned in previous slides, that is oncogene virus, oncogenic virus. Okay. So any viruses with RNA or DNA genome that promote cell transformation, promote uncontrollable cell generation, and lead to the development of malignant tumor, in turn that is termed as basically oncovirus. Okay, so about 15 to 20% of all human cancer incidents have viral etiology. Okay, so oncovirus such as hepatitis viruses, human papilloma viruses, Kaposi sarcoma associated herpes viruses, human T lymphotropic viruses, Epstein Barr viruses have been associated with the risk of this cancer disease. Okay, now you can see a screen on, image on your screen that illustrates how normal cell is transformed into a cancer cells on the activation of these oncogenes. So what is happening? The viral mechanism of oncogenicity is via either direct or what we say indirect mechanism. When you say direct mechanism, so direct viral mechanism of oncogenicity involves the introduction of new transforming gene into the cell or alteration of expression of pre-existing cellular oncogenes or what we call proto-oncogenes, whereas indirect mechanism of viral carcinogenesis involve chronic inflammation. Infected cells produce chemokines attracting immune cells which establish a chronic inflammatory microenvironment that persistently damage the local tissue, which in turn causes loss of normal growth regulation processes, genetic instability, alteration of DNA repair mechanism, resulting in formation of the cancer. Okay, now what we call the total cancer viral attributable cancer. Okay, the estimated total infection attributable cancer is approximately 18% of the global cancer burden of approximate 1.9 million cases almost every year. If I'll talk a little bit, more detail about the contribution of, because of this viral, so in which you can say because of infection basically. So you can say in which bacterium Helicobacter pylori contributes 5.5% of the cancer. Human papilloma viruses contributes 5.2%. If you talk about hepatitis B and C viruses, that contribute approximately 5%. If you talk about Epstein Barr viruses, contributes 1%. And human immunodeficiency virus contributes, HIV in short, approximately more than 1% or 1.2% more precise. So if these infections are prevented, there would be 26.3% fewer cancers. So imagine, because of infections, the contribution of cancer is more than 1/4 of the total cancer disease reported. Okay, so these are the image you can see on your left hand, like bacterium Helicobacter pylori, human papilloma viruses, what we call hepatitis B and C, Epstein Barr viruses, you can say, and human immunodeficiency virus. Okay, so now the conclusion, what we have discussed so far, we may infer that there are about 1.9 million cancer, approximately you can say 2 million cancer cases worldwide, which are produced by a variety of variables such as chemical exposure, what we call radiation exposure, radiation including both ionizing and non-ionizing, heavy metal exposure, or the production of what we call reactive oxygen species, ROS, and in an organism. Okay, so the DNA undergoes epigenetic modification as a result of all of these you might call changes, and all the factors discussed above in the previous slides lead to DNA damage and trigger initiation of oncogenes, which lead to the formation of the cancer. Okay, so people can avoid some cancer causing exposures such as tobacco smoke easily can be avoided. Also they can avoid sun rays, okay, with using different sunscreen or umbrellas, etc., depending on the weather. But other ones are harder to avoid, especially if they are in the air we breathe. It's difficult to stop it. The water we drink, the food we eat, or the material we use to do our jobs. Scientists started studying which exposures may cause or contribute to the development of cancer, understanding which exposures are harmful and where they are found may help people to avoid them. So thank you so much for listening patiently my third part of my talk. Thank you.